Social Strategy Podcast, episode 57.
Welcome to the Social Strategy Podcast, where it's all about making the most of your business with smart tips on what's working now in social media, online business, and good old-fashioned networking. And now your host, who's also known as Ross PR on Twitter, Vernon Ross.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Social Strategy Podcast, bringing you the best in online business, social media, and good old-fashioned networking. This is your host, Vernon Ross, and I'm so happy to be coming to you today. I've got a really special guest for you guys. His name is Harry Duran. He's the founder of Fullcast, which is an enterprise-level podcasting service. So this service is a total hands-off creation system for high-level clients, universities, doctors, people that don't really have the time to learn anything about how to podcast. They just want to go in, record their session, and then have a podcast automatically pop up on the internet. And so that's what Fullcast does. We're going to really get into what that service is and also get into Harry's background. He's a former and current DJ with some really interesting things about that and a productivity hacking expert. He drops a bunch of websites and services that you can use to make your life a whole lot easier. I was really excited about it. And he also gave a really special social media tip that I've been using, and it's common sense, but I just wasn't doing it. And it's something that if you guys do it, you're going to see immediate results from it. Really amazed about it. This episode is brought to you by the Social Strategy Academy, socialstrategyacademy.com. Go out there. You can get game-changing social media training. Is my new training site that I'm fully launching at the beginning of August. You guys are going to hear a lot more about that. And I'm going to give you a way in the next couple of weeks to be able to get in there for free. I'm launching a mobile website plugin to address the issues that Google has made in their changes, where if your site's not mobile responsive, it's going to get penalized. If you guys did not know that, that is something that's new. So definitely take a look at that. And if you don't have a mobile responsive, mobile ready website, this plugin is going to address that. Anyone that buys a plugin gets Social Strategy Academy lifetime access for free. That is right. Lifetime access for free just for buying the plugin. I am not going to put a link to the plugin in the show because that is going to come in the next couple of weeks right after Podcast Movement. So I will talk to you guys about Podcast Movement and all the other stuff at the end of the show. For now, let's go ahead and get right into the interview, and I will see you guys on the back end.
It's funny because as a DJ, the minute you start getting paid for gigs, I guess that's your first entrepreneurial job, right? And, you know, I don't have the prototypical lemonade stand story.
Right.
I mean, probably paper route is the closest I could get at that age to having a job on my own. But I think what was interesting is, now that I'm thinking about it and you asked, the DJing was really our own business. You know, we would have to go out and get gigs and get paid, and you know, there was 3 or 4 of us doing it at when we started. The group was called New Sounds. We had business cards and everything made up, and we were just we'd go to one party and then be like, oh yeah, can you do our party? And it's like it was networking 101 right at that time as well. They saw that you did a good job, and they're like, "We want you at our party. We want you at our daughter's high school graduation party."
Yeah, DJs are total 100% word of mouth type people.
Yeah, and then if they hear you, and it's word of mouth, and it's also you're at the party and you hear this DJ, and you're like, "Oh, this guy's good. I can find out if he's available for my party."
Yeah.
And then there's it's funny. I'm just thinking about the parallels right now, because from an equipment perspective, you've got to stay up to date with like the latest mixer. You got to buy headphones, and the needles on your turntables go bad. You got to buy new needles, and so it's one of those things that's probably as equipment intensive as podcasting is nowadays. You know, you're always trying to get the newest shiniest toys, right?
Right.
And back then it was the same thing, and vinyl is not cheap. Let me tell you.
No, it's not. Even now, it's still not all that cheap.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, I occasionally do one-off purchases of vinyl, like in flea markets. Mm-hmm. So I see like really cool vinyl. Like I saw something with Grace Jones. She had this phase where she was singing like in the late 80s.
Yeah.
Pull up to the bumper, and so it was. It was. I'm taking you back with that, right?
Oh yeah.
That was fun. I mean, I bought the whole album, and then I've seen other like compilations that I buy, and so I buy them one off, and I just come back here and I play them for a little while. So it's a lot of fun. It's nice to have the turntables handy.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: when you got into after DJing, when did you like finally hang that up?
I think when you mean in terms of realizing that it wasn't going to be my main income stream, and I wasn't going to be traveling the world and getting flown out to Ibiza. No, I think it never really took off as something where it was going to be super like main job for me, because I always had my 9 to 5, and I think even when I was in New York, I'd have a gig. When we were in Atlanta. I was in Atlanta recently, not that recently, probably about 4 years ago now. I did find a monthly party that I did, and I would just play 80s and 90s stuff, and they gave me 10% of the bar, and I obviously wasn't doing it for the money. It was just for the fun of it, and we did that for about 2 years. And that last party, there was like a couple hundred people there, and it was just all of my friends and our friends, my wife's friends from the area. So it was fun. I think if I could find something like that to keep the hobby going,
right,
I'd definitely do that. But yeah, it was never something that sort of took off. I did get into production as well because I wanted to learn how to make music, electronic music. And interestingly enough, I did that while I had some time in Atlanta. And my first 2 tracks were picked up by just a production company in like the UK. Because I had posted my music on SoundCloud, and they're like, "Oh, we like that," and they released it. It's on Beatport.
Are you serious?
If
you go to that.
Yeah, it's DJ HD. It's if you look it up on Beatport, there's like 3 or 4 tracks that this label picked up. So naturally, when that happens, I'm like, "Yes, I'm going to be a world famous music producer."
Right.
And then that sort of dries up, and you realize how hard it is to produce music that sounds good, because I knew how to like arrange tracks, and I had taken some online courses, but I think when I realized like the real professional stuff is next level, you have to go to a mastering class. So I took I went to a place called DubSpot. They have them here in LA and in New York, and it's where DJs go to learn like the skills of the trade. You can learn the basics of how to beat match, or just even fancy stuff like how to edit and produce tracks, music production. And then you get into mastering, mastering is its own thing as well, because once a track is produced, and I know as podcasters, we've dealt with a little bit of that when we're trying to make our final audio sound well. But for music, it's crazy because you have so many competing sounds at different frequencies. You have to control the bass, you have to control the mid-range, you have to make sure the treble, and the high end just doesn't get lost. Then you can like add reverb and put stuff towards the front of the room, towards the back, left, right, panning. It's a whole nother rabbit hole, but it was just fantastic. I spent about 12 weeks. I took a 12-week mastering class, which was fantastic.
Nice, interesting.
Yeah, and then it's just you realize how many more toys and plugins you'd have to pay for, and just becomes another monetary rabbit hole. It's like, oh, I got to get this plugin. It costs $500, and
right,
it's like,
something like podcasting.
Yeah, exactly.
Except for it's much more expensive.
Yeah, a lot of parallels.
Depending on what level you do it at.
Yeah.
How funny. So, now you mentioned that your regular 9 to 5 gig. Most podcasters are not full-time podcasters, of course. So what do you do? What's your background in other than the whole DJ world?
I do IT consulting. Mm-hmm. So
you don't have to mention the company, but
yeah, just been doing that for a while. I mean, I've always been. I've been in corporate America for probably 20 plus years. I started off in banking, and then I went into just mostly in finance, just managing customer service teams. I've always been interested in the marriage of technology and business. So in the beginning, I was doing project management type work, and then later on, I got introduced to e-business, which at that time was not very, nothing along the scale of what we're seeing now, but it was just embedded electronic chips and credit cards,
right,
and things like that, which is really, really like cutting edge, back in the early and the mid to late 90s, and then just moved over to managing, working in customer service departments, managing reporting teams of 10 to 15 folks, and then lasted, and then then moving into consulting, where we sell high-end, database and data management tools to enterprises, and just do the account management side for that. And so that's always interesting because there's this whole area of big data, which is a buzzword in enterprise, and you're in IT, so I'm sure you're fairly familiar with that. So that's another thing that you could spend, the next 20, 30 years just reading up on it and trying to be an expert at that. And it's another rabbit hole because there's so much new technology keeps changing, and even just staying on top of those technologies, because it starts out with like big data and the cloud, and then you get into like specific technologies like Hadoop and Hive and Pig and all these programming languages and MapReduce and just super techie stuff that you have to have a high level of to speak intelligently to a client. You don't have to necessarily be the super techie drill down, but I was in a meeting with some data scientist folks on our team, and they start getting up on the board and they start literally writing the formulas that you think are fake when you see them like in a movie. Like, no, that's not real. Nobody really writes like that. And they're like X over Y squared, Z squared, just square root. And they're like literally like writing it as if they were writing the alphabet. Like,
wow.
And I'm staring at the board and I'm like, okay. It was just crazy when you like that beautiful mind type stuff. Then like writing for me, like in Good Will Hunting, right? When he's writing on the board, like that's got to be fake, right?
Right.
Until I'm in the room and these two guys are like going at it. And the funny part is when they start correcting each other, like, no, actually that denominator should be X squared. You're not cubed, and you got to do the derivative of the blah blah blah. And I was just like, whoa. Lunchtime. I need to leave.
Yeah, that's
nothing to make you feel.
That's next level stuff, right?
Yeah,
there.
Nothing to really make you feel like a total like ignorant person when you're in the room with like two just PhDs.
Right. So,
but in retrospect, I mean, if you swap it and you take them and you put them in like in a sports bar and they're talking about the latest strategy for how the Broncos converted on fourth down at last night, they'd be like in roles reversed, right?
Right.
Not that I can speak football either. So
yeah, neither can I. So that's funny. So with that, your corporate experience. I mean, you've been in IT for 20 years, just like I have.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the lessons are that you've been able to take from corporate and apply to podcasting and the stuff that you're currently doing now? Because I think when most podcasters and a lot of online people and people that do business online, they automatically think that, well, because I'm doing this thing, I have to stop doing that thing.
Yeah.
I have to stop doing the corporate. Corporate is bad. I'm anti have a regular job. I've got to be this entrepreneur online, 6 figures online kind of guy all the time.
Wait, you're not making 6 figures, Vernon?
Well, not online.
Exactly. Not online.
Not online.
Yeah.
Not yet. It's not paying the mortgage yet.
Yeah.
But
no, I mean, I think I know. It's this sort of like misconception that everyone has that the corporate job is like the evil empire or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And what a lot of people don't realize is no, that job is paying, like you said, your mortgage. It's allowing you to have some disposable income to try these new things. And if they stay as hobbies, they stay as hobbies. But it's it's not like you're the only person at your job that's got a hobby. So for some people, it's woodworking, right? For some of your coworkers, it's mountain bike riding. And some people like to take, huge trips. And, and we podcast, that's our thing. And that's what makes us happy, because it feels like, we're expanding our creative muscles and getting to talk to cool people, and that's fun. And if that's where it stays, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's something to be said about your job being able to fund your hobbies, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Stop thinking that you have to just wait. You're waiting for some exit strategy that's just not going to happen, and then you're just going to keep holding out for this and just start to be resentful. And I think you just have to put things into perspective. If things do take off, I think they will on their own time, but it's nice not to have this pressure of like, oh man, I've got to monetize in 3 months because that's my runway. and I don't have any cash left after that. And I might have to go back to, whatever it is you're doing on the side, or go, waiting tables, or, drive an Uber or something like that. I mean, every Uber driver that I meet or Lyft driver is that's not their only gig.
Right. Exactly. Well, you know what's funny is I'll talk to entrepreneurs, and I want to know how you feel about this. Every entrepreneur, and all the advice is multiple streams of income. You've got to build multiple streams of income, and you're going to want to have more than one business. You're going to want to have more than one source of income. My thing is, and hey guys, it's going to get explicit, so I'll mark this one as explicit in iTunes. Don't give me shit because I'm still working my corporate job and trying to build this very successful business on the side. Because I'm not just doing the business on the side as my main business yet, or within the timeline that you think that I should be doing it. I may hate my corporate job, but that doesn't matter because it is a source of income. And instead of going out and trying to get venture capital and spending a year trying to write a plan to borrow money and give up equity and do all this stuff, I'm using my job as my angel investor, my venture capital, and putting money from that into building a business in a comfort zone. And at some point, it may get to the point where you're like, okay, I got to walk away from this because this really needs all of my attention. And when it gets to that point, it's great. But until then, there's nothing wrong with having job and podcast and consulting and whatever else you do, right? I mean, how do you feel about that?
No, I definitely agree. I mean, there's no reason in the world why you need to kill. It's the golden goose, right? You don't have to slay just because you want to prove to someone that you can do this on your own. At the end of the day, the only people that we need to be measuring ourselves up to or getting guidance from, I mean, if you're married, it's your spouse,
right?
Right, and it's your family, and that's basically the first folks who you need to keep happy, and if you're not doing anything to endanger the livelihood of the household, and by all means,
exactly.
I support my wife and her activities, and she supports me wholeheartedly in mine, and she understands that this is something that I'm doing in conjunction with the actual job that pays the majority of the bills.
Yeah, and
just it's like I'm in the same camp because I always think it's funny when people talk bad about their job, and everyone is going to have a bone to pick with their current employer. But I think you have to put things into perspective because it was probably that job that allowed you to buy your first equipment and allowed you the freedom to do this as a hobby. Because if you didn't have that and you had some other job where it wasn't as consistent or well paying as your corporate job, you'd probably be more concerned with trying to get more shifts at your restaurant, right? Or working more hours. I'm picking on Uber drivers totally, but working more hours on Uber because it's like you don't have that sort of job where you have that flexibility, So yeah. I think just everyone is in their, it's got their own story. There is no magic story. There's no John Lee Dumas, had this huge 100K plus runway to get his start, and because he put in the time, he was in a bunch of jobs in real estate, and he realized that he needed to have this before he got started, and he did it smart. He got some high-end coaching, and everyone's story and the majority of people's story is not going to be like that. So there's as many people as there are doing podcasting. That's about as many different stories into how to get to the finish line that there are. So there's no one size fits all.
No, I like that. Which is a good segue into some of the stuff that you're doing. You've started a company called Fullcast.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about Fullcast. If you want to talk about Fullcast, do you want to talk about Fullcast?
Have you signed the non-disclosure agreement?
Sure.
Done. Signed. Fullcast was born out of some coaching that I was a part of. I'm in a high-end coaching program myself because I'm just a firm believer that I need to be around people smarter than me. I wasn't learning from the current group of friends that I had. They were all well-intentioned, and I got good advice. And if I needed to bounce an idea off someone, that's something I could do in a Facebook group or with a email exchange. But at some point, you need to figure out what the bigger boys are doing. And the only way to do that is to jump into that arena, right? And sometimes you have to pay to play. And for me, it's almost like the price of an MBA, but the value for me is like 10 times greater because I'm learning from people who market at a completely different level. they market to, they have 7-figure businesses, some of them with 8-figure businesses. And I've had the privilege of talking to some on my podcast, on Podcast Junkies. But others, I've had the privilege of being at a table with them during a 2-day intensive, as part of the group, and just, hey, what do you think about this side, this side, this side? And they're like, oh, that's good, but I've did this with my program, and you should try this. And so I thought I wanted to create a high-end podcasting service. It starts off with podcasting. We do some social media management as well, but it's called Fullcast because I think it really encompassed the whole idea of like full done for you. I've seen some, and there's no shortage of that. It's funny when you jump into a space, you see people on all ends of the spectrum. There's people fighting it out at the bottom, and they're like, "We'll do podcast for 100 episodes. We'll do it for 80. We'll do it for 70. We'll do it for 50." I'm like, guys, how low are you going to go here? What are you going to do? Like, you're going to run out of countries to outsource to because everyone,
you're going to be paying your VA.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where these people are, but the fact that you can get an episode edited for that means we're probably talking, you're breaking some child labor laws in some country. So then I said, no, I want to create a complete done for you service, and when I say done for you, I mean completely done for you. A lot of people stop at the editing piece, and they're like, okay, we edited for you, and we wrote you up some show notes, and we did some timestamps for you, and here's your file. Go ahead. And here's your text, go ahead and post it. And then I realized there was a class of entrepreneurs, class of successful thought leaders who realized the importance of podcasting, but just have never looked into it because they just realized, I'm not going to sit there watching a YouTube video on how to edit in Adobe Audition. I'm not going to download or subscribe to the best social media mavens out there to figure out when is the ideal time to post to Twitter. Right. I'm not going to sit there and create I'm not even going to go to Fiverr and find a great artist to do my artwork, for $20-$30 or something like that. Like all these little things that as podcasters we take for granted because just do this, just go to this service, or just try Fiverr or try Elance. These people that have these 7-figure, 8-figure businesses, they're successful already because they've learned to outsource all this stuff a long time ago. Exactly. And one of the things my coach says is there's 4 types of tasks. There's those you're incompetent at, those you're competent at, those you're excellent at, and you're genius. Very quickly, you got to get those last 2 off your plate, competent, incompetent. That's not your sweet spot. Be done with those. Get those out, and think of things like dry cleaning, having a maid clean your house once a month. Just very, very basic stuff that's not in your wheelhouse and you shouldn't be doing. The excellent is where people get hung up because this is stuff that I'm really good at. And a common example is twiddling around with a graphic in HTML on your website. Right. Who starting out hasn't spent countless hours trying to write a line, a JPEG image, and no, in your sidebar it's no, and then refresh, and then before you know it, it's half the day is gone, and it's well, okay, and then when you finally do it, it still doesn't look right. You're and then because we wanted to save the $20 we would have paid a graphic designer do it. Exactly. And hello, you just spent 6 hours doing it yourself. So I think when that light bulb went off for me and I realized, oh, okay, if I can pay, even things that cost $20, $30, $40, $50, if let's say you put if you make a good salary or you've got a successful 7-figure business, your hourly rate is probably in the hundreds of dollars. So if you can pay someone, $80, $90 to do a task for you, then have them do it. And then, usually it's these excellent type tasks. The genius is literally 3 to 5% of the things that you're good at, but it's such a sweet spot of tasks that only you can do because of your experience, because of your upbringing, because of your language abilities, because of your speaking abilities, because of your networking abilities, because you know how to do this one thing really, really, really good. And then you mash that all together, and that's your IP, right? That's your intellectual property. And that's your genius, right? Focus on your genius. And it's that I got that message last year, and I've just been riding out like a horse, and I'm focus on my genius, focus on my genius. And sometimes I pay people I can't imagine having paid people for this type of help before, but someone to help me edit an ebook I put out, I paid them $500 just to get me started with help me organize my ideas. At the end of the day, you realize these people do that stuff way better than I can. And even design work, just pay the experts at what they do, man. Just let them do their stuff. Let them do their genius. And you should focus on building your business. Like, those days that you sit there and you're trying to think of like, okay, who's my next strategic business partner? Who am I going to joint venture with? Like, where am I going to go for my next client? Or how am I going to put this proposal together? That's high-end stuff, right? That's the stuff that if you pull it off, it's another couple of grand a month in revenue for you, right? No one else can do that stuff. Only you know how to do that, and that's where you should be spending your time. So I'm just a firm believer in that mindset shift that's happened for me, and it's why I created Focus, is because I want to let people focus on their genius. And for a lot of people, podcasting is not their genius. They can record. They sound amazing. My clients sound amazing on their mic. I guide them in the proper setup and how often they're going to publish and what their interview skills are like. But when they do their thing, and they're super successful at it, and you can tell that they're having fun with it. One of my clients just was a new Noteworthy, got like 30 iTunes 5-star reviews. He's super happy. He's been asked to appear on 2 other shows.
Nice.
He's been asked to appear at a speaking event, and he's already signed up a new client as a result of the podcast.
Oh wow, that's sweet.
And he literally, he puts his file in Dropbox, and he doesn't even know sometimes what happens next. He doesn't need to, Vernon. That's what I'm saying. Like, when I work with these clients, and I'm working with a co-working space in downtown LA as well, like, they don't need to be the experts in podcasting that everyone thinks they need to.
Yeah.
And I think it's this mentality of some of the old schoolers, and you've probably seen it in some of the forums or, some of the Facebook groups where they're like, why are people paying for masterminds? Or why are people signing up for podcast programs? All this stuff is on the internet. All this stuff is on YouTube for free. Yeah, of course it's free, but
it takes time. And
these people haven't that message about the time for money.
Yeah.
And paying, putting a value on what you should be working on. These people don't want to be, these high-end performers are not, I guarantee you, are not sitting there watching Adobe Audition videos.
No, they're not. What's funny about that, when you say that, people, they use that term, it takes time to make money, and time is money, and they'll get into this mindset of, if I spend the time doing it, then I'm saving the money, so therefore I'm making money by doing it myself. And it's like, no, you don't understand. Anything that you do that's not a dollar activity is not worth your time. If it doesn't directly impact your income, you should not be doing it when it comes to actually producing the thing that you do. Yeah. So for me, it took a lot for me to let go of editing, because I'm like, I love editing. I not really, but I'm like, I'm good at this audio editing. I can look at the sound file and know where the is, because I say it the exact same way all the time. I know what the wavelength looks like. I don't even have to listen to it. I can just boom, 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 take it out. And I just did that, and it only took me 45 minutes to edit this podcast. Well, that's 45 minutes that I didn't spend doing something that could have actually possibly got me a new client, like sending an email on LinkedIn, or a couple of new introductions, or some networking work that I could have been doing, something that has more of an impact than me sitting there listening to an interview that I did already again and smiling through the whole thing, because I love listening to the podcast and the information that's in there and taking it all back in, but not the best use of my time. And you're absolutely right. You see a lot of that in the forums. Like, why are people paying for this stuff? It's like, because.
Yeah. Yeah, and the folks that operate at this level, I mean, they figured it out long time ago, right? They're like, this is not my wheelhouse. This is not my genius. I don't need to be doing this. And even them at that high level, I'm sure it gets harder and harder to hand off stuff, because the hourly rate for the services that they need as they move up that chain get higher. But it's probably okay, because they're probably 10xing their income anyway, because they're getting these bigger and bigger deals and closing these, $10,000, $20,000 a month engagements, speaking, whatever it is you focus on. They always say when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you should work on is, what is the one thing that will move my business forward? A lot of people get stuck. They jump into email, and let me tell you, email's not it. Right.
Yeah, email is, I don't know who said, I think it was Brendan Burchard, email is another way of other people controlling your daily activities.
Yep, it's a collection of other people's agendas.
There we go. That's what it is. That's why I don't look at email for the first hour of the day.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, I refuse to do it because what'll happen, you get in that rabbit hole of trying to answer back emails and thinking about it, and it's like, nope, I don't do it. I actually listened to one of the Brendan Burchard's Experts Academy recordings, and he was talking about that, and I got in his High Performance Academy program and was listening to that, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is wasting my time in the morning, and I'm getting busy, and then I'm too busy to really get anything done, and another 8 hours has gone past, and, oh, wait a minute, I never did send that email, or I never did get back with this person because I was doing all these other things within email and all these tasks that were taking me away from what I was actually doing, which I guess that leads me into another thing with you real quick is productivity. You're a big productivity, like, hacker guy, right?
Yeah, I'm super nerd with that. I'm some OCD aspect of my personality. But when I found this whole productivity hacking community, man, I just jumped in with both feet, and I interviewed one of my productivity led heroes, Ari Meisel of Less Doing. I jumped into his boot camp for a while, and I had him on the. He was gracious enough to come on as a guest, and I just love picking people's brains who think in a way that I think makes sense, like how to organize. There's a lot of tools, and there's a huge rabbit hole. Like even on my phone, I have a whole folder of the stuff that I call Do Less. So I use Fancy Hands, which is an online concierge service. Mm-hmm. You can do a whole range of things with them. You can say, hey, can you find 4 flights, the best flights for me on American Airlines leaving Sunday? And then they'll do the work for you, because you could do that. You can go to Kayak and look it up. But again, do I want to spend 20 minutes looking for an airline? No. I pay these people. I think it's a monthly membership fee, and you get like 15 tasks. But I use it so much, I bought the annual package. And I don't play around. So just it's funny because it's little things like, okay, we're going to go to a restaurant. Can you call ahead, find out what's on the menu for today, and find out if there's a corkage fee, and then find out if they have tables outside. Just stuff that you would spend on the phone. Like I have credit card charges that I dispute. I take a screenshot and I send them off to Fancy Hands. I was like, can you call the company and dispute this and find out what you find back? They do like they go that first, couple of hours that is usually a back and forth conversation, and then they bring you in what's needed. I've had them go on to Verizon and say, when you get an operator on the phone, which I know is going to take like 45 minutes, then patch me in. And I just go about my day and I just doing the normal stuff, and they're like, hey Harry, it's Susan from Fancy Hands, and then she connects me to Verizon, and then that 5 minutes of time is what I needed to do to get what I needed to get done on Verizon, awesome. Not an hour and a half waiting on hold, I've asked them for look, can you look, I need to take my dog to a vet. Can you find out the 3 closest, veterinarians near my house and that are open on Saturday, and find them if they take insurance, just like random stuff. It's funny because I keep sending them stuff that I'm like, I'm wondering if one day they're going to bounce stuff back to me. I've used them for social media stuff, for my podcast, to do research on guests. Here's a name. Can you find out what you can about this person? Here's a form. Can you take these research? This is their Twitter handle. Can you find their matching Facebook and Instagram handles? For this list of 100 names. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to sit there and scan sites for all this stuff. Anything that sounds mundane and boring, it's probably something you shouldn't be doing if you're dreading the thought of just sitting there doing it. So that's a huge godsend for me. Fancy Hands, Fiverr. Obviously, we podcasters know all about the cool stuff on Fiverr.
Oh yeah.
Pocket, as a lot of people use Pocket to just grab a lot of articles. Mm-hmm. So as you see stuff in the browser, click it, and you can read it later, which is fantastic. And the great thing about Pocket is I created a recipe using a website called IFTTT.com, which is sort of connects websites together. This one recipe will take something that I put in Pocket with my tag on it. I have a VA, so the tag will send that article to a one line in Google Sheets. So every time I tag it, it just adds another line, another line, another line. When my VA sees that in Google Sheets, she knows, okay, this is what Harry wants to post to Twitter. Now, someone will say, why don't you just post that directly to Twitter? Twitter always works better when you have an image, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone knows it gets more visibility. So my VA takes the article. She natively posts the image that's on the newspaper article on the website she grabs the image, and if she has to grab it and download it and save it, she does that as well. So that when she posts the article, and then what I've also trained her to do is read the article and see who the author is. 9 times out of 10, the author is going to have a Twitter handle. She includes the Twitter handle of the author and the Twitter of the website where it came. So if it's Times or New York Times or Fortune Magazine, at Fortune Mag. So she makes it really, really engaging, because I'm like, I got one chance to post this. I'm not going to haphazardly post it and hope someone picks up on it. And I can't tell you how many times like the author of the article sees themselves tagged, and they're like, oh, they retweeted.
Wow. So wow, that in itself that was worth talking to you. That's a social strategy that you guys should be using. Now, that's Gary Vaynerchuk level stuff, but with automation, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool. And then some of the other things I use is TaskRabbit, which is like Fancy Hands, but in person.
Yeah, you told me about that one.
TaskRabbit's fantastic. I needed to run a hard line from my living room to my office, because the Skype conversations are much better when you have a hard line. And I said, I'm not going to be crawling around my crawl space underneath my house. I said, I went on TaskRabbit. I said, who will do this? And there's these people that do it. There's these IT technicians that on the side or on the weekend, they want to make some extra cash. They've got the tools, they got the crimping tools and all that stuff. He said, okay, I need to go by Home Depot and get like a spool of wire and some connectors. I was like, okay. They buy it themselves, and then when they get here, it's again like Uber. Your credit card is already on file. The guy was here crawling around my house, like drilling stuff in walls, and 3 or 4 hours. I helped him run a little bit of the cable. And then he's gone, and I have like a connection, hardwired connection between my 2 rooms.
Yeah, and you didn't have to run to Home Depot to do it.
No, I never left my house. I just had to make some lemonade for the guy. And the other thing we did when we moved from New York to LA is my wife and I needed some help packing boxes. So TaskRabbit, someone came on, I think it was $50-$60, and she came over for 4 or 5 hours, helped us pack boxes, bought her some Chinese food, and she was happy,
That's crazy, man. Yeah, I don't know if TaskRabbit is available in St. Louis yet.
The last one I'm going to tell you about, I just found out about this one. This gets so crazy that you don't even realize all this stuff exists, but it's called Luxe, Luxe. So Luxe is valet service, but like on-demand valet. So I was invited to speak at a panel with the Esprit Devora, who hosts We Are LA Tech podcasts. Yeah. And she asked me to be on a panel, and I went. It was in downtown, and she's connected to all these companies. That's why I heard about it. So they gave free people who are going to come down, try out Luxe for the first time, to give you $15 credit. So I drive up my car to the spot. There's no parking anywhere in the street. There's nothing available. I tell the Luxe driver, I ping him, I said, I'm here. He's like, okay, I'll be right over. A guy comes over around the corner with a blue valet Luxe jacket, and he had like a skateboard in hand. I guess they're nearby, so they can just scoot over. And they have deals with like local parking areas. He comes over. He's like, okay, I'm here. So I give him my car keys. And I'm like, okay, I guess this is how I'm giving some this total kid my car keys. I give him my car keys. I go inside. He's like, okay, just let me know when you want the car back. He drives away, goes park in some lot. I don't know where. The max, I think it's $5 for the first hour. Max is $15, so it can't go beyond that. And in LA, that's pretty normal anyway, but for the convenience. So 15 minutes before I'm done, I ping him. It's all, again, obviously smartphone driven. Right. I ping him, and I'm like laughing to the people inside. I'm like, this is crazy. I walk outside, and the guy pulls up. He's like, hey, comes over, gives me my keys to my car, and it's like, I'm on my way. I'm like, this is awesome.
That's amazing. Yeah, I don't know if Luxe is in my city, but I'll be using it.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. These are some great tips, dude.
Yeah. I'm always trying this new stuff out, and
I love it. Well, you told me about Slack. I wasn't familiar with Slack until you told me about that. So now I'm just training my VA on how to actually use Slack, so I can do less back and forth in email and trying to remember which VA, because my VAs had similar names, and I'm trying to remember which one is which and who to pay. And I'm like, oh wait, I just need to put this in Slack.
Yeah. And you got to encourage them to put their photos in there too. My VA still has the standard image, but I've got someone on the ground here who's joined my team part-time. They're on Slack, and it's amazing how much you can get done because there's one-off questions you have. And I guess for the listeners who don't know, Slack is a collaborative online chat tool. I think they're not the only ones in the space, and they obviously weren't the first ones. And there was things like Yammer and Google Chat, but I think what they've done, they've made it fun to actually like chat, and and the interface is cool, the sound effects are cool, and just everything about the experience is so fantastic that you just have a fun time using it. And whereas before, I probably, like you, used to keep everything in one long Skype chain. The great thing about Slack is it links in other systems as well, so you can keep other conversations. And I don't know if you knew this, but MailChimp has a connector into Slack. So when people sign up for your list, you'll get a ping on Slack.
I did not know that. Oh, that's sweet. I did not know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's always a fun little ping when you get, a new sign up.
Wow. See, See, this is why I do the random stuff, because so much good stuff usually comes out when we start talking about the stuff that we do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I could talk productivity for hours, man. I'm super nerd on that.
Now, let me ask you a question about that. Why don't you have a productivity podcast?
That's a good question. I had thought about it. I even grabbed the domain name. It was productivitysauce.com.
I like that.
And I was like super excited because I was going to make them short, like 10 to 15 minute vignettes. And I had a list of like 30 or 40 companies just out of the bat, because I just use a lot of them. And some of them are like Chrome extensions and just real things that'll shave off, a couple minutes off your day. And I just had this list. I was building lists, 40, 50, 30, 40, 50 companies. And I was just going to have my VA start reaching out to them. And in the spirit of being productive, I had to come up with a system that was not going to require a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, as with a podcast, you still get that last mile, if you will, of the editing.
Yeah.
And unless, you can find a way to automate that, or just don't do any editing, it's hard, because, I was going to have to promo give an intro for the company. I was going to do it more like Entrepreneur on Fire style and just have stock questions. Just answer these questions, and then we'll go and make it 10, 15 minutes tops. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't figure out a way to pull it off without having it be an extra incurred expense from starting a new podcast and then doing the production when I was trying to focus my time on Podcast Junkies. So it's definitely something, and I wanted to do something different than what's out there. And I know a lot of people do cover that space already, so I just follow them for now. But I thought of a way. The only way I thought would make sense is if I could create a way to have the host who is on now, or the guest who is on now, interview the next guest, and then just have that go as a chain. Okay, you have to interview the next guest, and here's the questions you're going to ask them. I don't think I need it. And I could get anyone to agree to that, but it's almost like a driverless podcast or something like that. So it just takes on a life of its own.
I don't know. I think there's a spot somewhere for a short form podcast where you just give a tip like you just gave, without any editing that you have to do. Yeah,
I think that will come when they've perfected the production from a mobile phone. And the sound, and obviously the sound quality as well, because I think there's still this, because the mobile is the best opportunity for you to record and get it up online super quick. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, I've been messing around with that with this Spreaker Studio app. Have you seen that?
I have seen it, but I haven't played around with it.
I played around with it, and I posted an episode up to Spreaker. It actually didn't sound bad.
Yeah.
It didn't sound like my regular podcast, but I don't think it made much of a difference to the people that listen to it. So my goal is to get a few of those out there, do a survey, find out, do they care about the sound and how it is, or do they not? And if they don't, then I'll probably do more stuff for my phone. I know the Ringer service is out there too, and it actually sounds pretty good.
Yeah, well, I think that all this stuff is in beta. I know that I've heard a couple of podcasts where they've tested out Ringer, and it sounds pretty decent. Mm-hmm. The other service that folks are raving about is PodClear.
Yeah, I've heard about PodClear too.
I tried it on a call. Someone tried it on a call with me, and thankfully I was recording my end already, because the audio came out garbled and it was sped up or something. There was something wrong with it. So I had done my typical call recorder Skype combo, and that ended up being what I went with.
That saves the day a lot of the time.
Oh, yeah.
All right, man. Well, hey, dude, it has been cool hanging out and talking with you and learning some stuff about you that I didn't know, and I'm sure nobody else knew, and all about your productivity stuff, which I don't think you get a chance to talk about enough.
No, I've talked about it. We have a mutual friend, Chris Duran. I talked about it a bit when I was on his show, and for the listeners that don't know, I actually tried to put together a productivity conference, but then I realized the challenges inherent in that. I had 8 speakers lined up, fantastic folks who were going to speak at the conference, but it's almost one of those things where I definitely failed at that, and I'm a big fan of trying and failing as opposed to never trying at all. And so that was a huge lesson for me in terms of like what I can get off the ground. And next time, maybe I'll try to validate the idea a bit more and do like a Kickstarter or Indiegogo and see if there's an appetite for that. But that doesn't mean you can't try, because I'm a big proponent of, fail fast and fail often.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call that one a failure. I would call that one you learned a very valuable lesson.
Yeah.
And, next time it'll go a lot easier because you know the mistakes that you made and you know exactly where to start. And so, it was a Kickstarter on its own.
Yeah.
You just didn't get funded for it.
It was a kick in the ass starter.
Exactly. There you go. Oh, yeah, man. Before I forget, because I almost did, actually I did. And so we're recording this after the fact. So full transparency here on the podcast, guys. It happens. Where can people find you online?
So for the Fullcast services, it's fullcast.co. So it actually, there's no M missing at the end of that. It's fullcast.co. And for the podcast that I host, that Vernon was so gracious to be a guest on recently, it's Podcast Junkies. Just go to podcastjunkies.com and you can find me there. And then I'm online at podcast_junkies.
Awesome, man. It was actually a pleasure and an honor to be on Podcast Junkies because I'm in some really good company there.
Yeah, a lot of cool people there.
Definitely appreciated that. And so this is actually where we'll say goodbye. And I'm totally leaving all of this in because I just think it just shows how funny it is when you podcast, because the conversation was going so great. I didn't even think about, where can people find you?
Yeah. Well, it's real, man. I like real conversations. Right. I'm a big fan of #real talk, man.
There you go. #real talk. We came up with another one when we were talking. What was it? It was # something.
CompUSA.
That's right. #CompUSA.
For more details, listen to the episode.
Right. I think that's a great note to end it on. All right, Harry, man. Hey, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast. I really do appreciate it.
Hey, thanks again for having me on.
All right, man. See you. All right, that was an amazing interview. Harry dropped so many knowledge bombs on us with that and the productivity hacks and the social media tip. So if you guys didn't catch the social media tip, I just wanted to repeat it for you. When you're reading an article on social media, now I'm not going to give you the whole automation thing because you got to go back and listen to the details for that. But if you're doing your stuff manually on Twitter, all you have to do is, if there is an author or someone who's written something in Entrepreneur and entrepreneur.com or Entrepreneur Magazine, Success Magazine, Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, @reply the author, the actual article author, along with Forbes or Wall Street Journal or whoever it is. And most of the time, they're going to retweet you and they might even reach out to you directly. It's a great way to kind of prep people for interviews. You do a little bit of social sharing of their stuff to begin with, and you're actually making a connection. So it's a wonderful networking thing. It's a great way to get yourself relevancy in social media with influencers retweeting your stuff, which is just going to push you up higher. And if you still like your clout score, it's also going to have an impact on your clout score because people that have greater influence are retweeting you and possibly even sharing your stuff as well. So that was a really good tip. And totally, if you only got that tip, this interview would be worth listening to. But there's so much other value in this interview. I hope you guys really, really take advantage of it. When this episode comes out, which is actually this week, next week, I will be at Podcast Movement the weekend of the 31st. So definitely, if you are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, DFW, definitely come to Podcast Movement. There's so many people there. I'm going to be speaking there. I'm actually doing something a little different. I'm speaking at Podcast X instead of a session, and I'm going to be talking about sponsorship and the beginnings of how do you actually build a sponsorship offering, the things that you need, the components that you need to be successful, and the things that you can do even if you have a brand new show to get sponsorship. And it's not anything that you've ever heard before from anyone else. I did a little preview of this at Podcast Midwest. I'm going to give some more of this out at Podcast Movement. And of course, I'm going to have information on how you can get more, which brings me to go out to socialstrategyacademy.com. There is a sponsorship toolkit that's going to be coming down soon, but only after I do this webinar. I'm going to be doing a webinar next week with Steve Stewart, and we're going to be talking about sponsorship, and I'm going to be giving a lot of information in that webinar that you guys will be able to get free. I believe it's for 48 hours before Steve puts it behind a paywall. So definitely make sure that you attend that webinar. Okay, and make sure to keep those emails coming and the Instagram tags and reaching out to me on Twitter, and definitely email me, vernon@vernonross.com. I really do enjoy getting those. And oh, by the way, I almost forgot, make sure you check out Podbean. Podbean is a friend of the show. They're not a sponsor, but they are a friend of the show, and friends of the show are relationships that I have with different companies of products that I recommend that we don't have an official sponsorship relationship. But if you go out to the website and you use promo code VRPodbeanFree, you're going to get a 30-day Podbean account totally free on me for 30 days to use. It's unlimited. It's better than the deal you can get if you go out to their site and sign up. And if you do sign up, it's only $8 a month for unlimited audio. It is the cheapest and best quality deal right now going on in podcasting. So if you are launching a podcast, definitely check out Podbean because it's amazing and they offer an amazing service. I'm really happy with it. I'm playing around with it. My podcast is out there, but the great thing about this that I love about it is monetization. And I know we always talk about monetization as podcasters, and people that listen to the show want to know, how do I make money for my blog and my podcast and everything else like that? Podbean is one way to do it because they have a patron system built into the website and also built into the mobile app. So if you get people to listen to the mobile app or listen to your show, if you have a podcast on the mobile app, they can become a patron right then and there, even if they only give $1. If you have 1,000 listeners, or if you have 300 listeners and you get 150 of them, half of them to give you $1, you're now getting $150 per episode, which is going to help with production costs and equipment costs and everything else associated with producing a quality podcast. So definitely make sure, check out Podbean. If you like, use my code VRPodbeanFree. You'll get a 30-day free account just to try it out and see what you like. If you decide to go ahead and keep it, I make a little bit of money to help keep producing this show and bringing you quality guests. And that's needed. So, all right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, and I will see you in the next episode.
They need to be